Hello there, Year 8. Welcome along, a very warm welcome along to Term 3, Lesson 3. And what we're going to be doing today is as follows. We're going to be starting today's lesson by looking at an image and describing our first impressions of that image in the role of the character that we started to create last lesson. And then what we're going to do, very similar to looking at some of the things that we did last lesson, we're going to look at how we can use some creative and emotive language when writing in the role of a character based on our first impressions and our first experiences of evacuee life. So, the resources that you are going to need for today are as follows. Can I ask you to have either your drama book or some note paper and a pen in front of you? And can I also ask for your diary entry, but not necessarily the diary entry in terms of the knowledge that was in it, but at the top of that diary entry, I asked you to note down some information about the character that you are created, and that is going to come in really, really useful for today's session, so you can use some of that knowledge in the work that you're doing today. So, pause the video now, come back when you've got all those resources ready. Wonderful stuff. Okay, so this image on the left-hand side of your screen is the home that you, in the role of your character, are going to be staying in for the foreseeable future. So you and your friend have just been selected by a host family. They seem friendly. They look like they might be farmers. You all walk as a family 5 minutes and you arrive at their house, which is displayed in the picture. Now, all I'd like you to do is this. I'd like you, in the role of your character, to write down 3 to 6 first impressions you get when you see the house. Then what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to draw an arrow from that explaining why you wrote that impression. So let me give you a small example. So as you can see on my map, I've got coming off it my first impression that is in red, and then in purple I put why I wrote that about the image particularly. So I've put, as my example, excited but a little overwhelmed. And then I've put that because I'd never seen a house so big before. We only lived in a flat in London. So what I'm doing is I'm taking some of the knowledge of my character, I'm taking some creative license. So in essence, I'm making some of it up. But I'm linking it back to the image, okay? And that is really important. You have creative license over this, so you can decide how many people there are in the family. You can decide, actually, whether, you know, as you've been walking home, they don't seem that friendly. You can decide what your character thinks about living on a farm, and whether they're impressed by that, what kind of family they've come from. So if their parents are doctors and nurses, maybe manual labour is going to be something that's quite new to them, and maybe they're not overly impressed by that idea. But what I would like you to do is this. You've got 5 minutes, 3 to 6 first impressions written down, and then an arrow coming off those first impressions with why you wrote that. So I'm going to pop the image back on the screen, and now you have 5 minutes, and come back to the video when you are done. Wonderful stuff. Okay, welcome back. So, I am again going to give you a scenario, and you can see that in the top blue coloured box on the screen in front of you. You have been living with your host family for just over a week. Your host family have asked you to write a letter to your home. So whether that's mum, dad, whoever that you might be living with, based on what you decide for your character, what life you want them to have. Now, you are being asked to work on the farm, and you're being asked to contribute by doing some manual labour, as the host family's own children are expected to do. So you're not really being treated any differently, but I want you to talk about maybe that experience for you as somebody who's come from a city and probably have never even seen a farm before. Talk about that in your first letter home. So your main task for today's lesson is, in the role of your character, I'd like you to write a letter home to your mum and dad, or mum or dad, or whoever that you live with, about your first week with your host family. I'd like you to make particular reference to your first impressions of the family, what sort of things you're being asked to do on the farm and how you feel about that. Your feelings and emotions about being evacuated, maybe the journey, you could reference that again, but you did that in your diary entry, so don't spend too long doing that. What life's like there, how is the food, are the people nice, do you get on with the children of the host family? Whether or not you're ready to come home is another thing that you could talk about. Maybe you're still excited by the prospect. Maybe you've decided that you don't like being away from home. And I've put etc. at the bottom because this is not limited to. These are just some of the things that you could be talking about. So make particular reference to the things that I have noted, but again, you can talk about more things if you have the space and the time to do that. So the success criteria. Your letter should be no longer than about 3/4 of a page to a page long. A page is a maximum, okay? And if you're doing it in your drama book, that would be 2 pages. So it's a page of A4 or 2 pages of A5 maximum. Talk about how you felt in those moments, okay? Don't just describe them to us, okay? So give me the feelings and emotions that your character felt about coming to the house, about that scenario, about the family. And then finally, use creative vocabulary to engage and invoke an emotional response from your reader. If you're describing something really, really emotional, I want to hear that with the kind of language that you are using within this letter home, okay? Structure it as a letter, naturally. I'm sure that you know how to do that from your very wonderful and excellent English lessons, but that really is what I'm asking you to do. It should take you no longer than 30 minutes, okay? So this as a whole should take you no longer than 45 minutes and watching the video, because we did a 5-minute task before and we've done a 30-minute task now. So what I would like you to do when you have done that, you need to submit all your work through Microsoft Teams, and your teacher will specify when that needs to be submitted, okay? That will be sent to you with the resources that you have received for today's lesson. And then what do you need to submit? You need to submit your first impressions, so your 3 to 6 first impressions and why you wrote those down, and your letter home. Okay, so do let us know if you have any questions. Stay safe, stay wonderful. Hope that you're all doing very, very well. It's been lovely to speak to you. Goodbye.